That is good. That is good. All right. Here we go. Take two, because it's one of those days, Jenny. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Mormon News Report podcast for the week of February 4th, 2019, the superb owl edition. It is Sunday night, Jenny. I know, you see what I did. It's fancy. It's a Sunday night. There's a certain game going on in about an hour and a half, and so therefore, I propose to you, hey, maybe we could do it during halftime, because I had a feeling you probably wouldn't be interested in the game. And then you said, yeah, but what if I'm actually interested in halftime? So we're doing it. This is like the pregame to the Super Bowl, right?
Yes, that's right. This is the red carpet. Wait.
There you go.
See?
There you go. Because who doesn't want to get their dose of Mormon news before they go to the Super Bowl? I know that I look for any opportunity to get it before a big sporting event. So there's that.
Or after, if this is Monday morning and this is your run, hey, how about that game, you guys?
The sports ball and the thing. And
no, here's the thing. Yes, I'm kind of more into the arts than I am to the organized sports, but I am sportsy. I'm pretty athletic, and they're not mutually exclusive. So I'm trying to stop saying sports ball. Full disclosure, I won't have watched the game. I'm fairly confident, but I mean, could you believe it? Man, they really won out there. They really did it.
So here's what you get to look forward to. I think they are going to play Sweet Victory from the SpongeBob TV show at halftime. That is the last that I heard that they were going to play. And I'm not kidding you, because the creator of SpongeBob passed away this past year, and there was a whole Twitter campaign to get him some recognition, and I think that's what they're going to do. So anyways, for those of you who've already seen the Super Bowl, it was a phenomenal game. Exactly. So let me, Jenny, if we could do a little bit of housekeeping before we get into the main show.
Okay. Yeah.
If those of you are interested, you can find the Mormon News Report podcast on a lot of different areas. You could find us on Stitcher. You can find us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, or iTunes, or your favorite pod-fetching app. So if someone says, hey, how can I listen to them? All you got to do is show them one of those things. I know, Jenny, a lot of kids these days, a lot of the younger folks that I work with, I get all my podcasts through a pod app. I use Podcast Addict. But a lot of them, they just go straight to Spotify because all the main podcasts are on there, and they use it anyways for their daily life. So if you want to get more of us, you can find us on Spotify. Number two, we always...
Wait, can I go back? Sorry.
Yes.
I would be interested to know, actually, for those of you who are listening, how are you listening? I would love to know that. So either let us know on our Facebook page, the Mormon News Report on Facebook, or tell us on Twitter at the Mormon News, or write us a letter at P.O. Box. Just kidding. Don't do that.
Maybe I should get a P.O. Box if we want people to write old school letters that we can open up on air.
We put it in our scrapbook.
There you go. Jenny, I don't know about you. I have a Mormon News Report scrapbook that is probably about a foot thick with all the stuff that you found.
Yeah.
A couple other housekeeping things. Please, those of you who listen and enjoy the show, you can always rate us on iTunes and leave a review. The more ratings we get, the higher the potential for our show to be when someone searches Mormon or news or something like that. And finally, Jenny, in the pre-show ad, for those of you who are not Patreon subscribers, you hear an ad before the show starts. You mentioned that we have a Mormon News Report Amazon page. You can get the new book from Signature Books called Confidence Amid Change through Amazon. And if you go through our special site, so if you look in the show notes for this show, or if you go on our main webpage, mormonnewsreport.com, you can find a link to that. If you just click that link and purchase it through that link, it's not going to cost you any more. And we might get a little bit of a kickback from Amazon, which helps for server costs and things like that. So that's what I've got. And you could use that link for anything, any Amazon purchase. If you're like me and you seem to be ordering something from Amazon about once a week, it definitely helps the show out.
Yeah.
So, Jenny, before we get into the main show, we need to talk a little bit about a book we were sent, and I wanted to get your thoughts on it for a while. So our old pal Blair Hodges over at the Maxwell Institute sent us a copy of the Book of Mormon Maxwell Institute Study Edition. It's written by Grant Hardy. Now, this is the second edition of this book. I have the original first edition that was written back in like 2010 or 2012, and that was put out through Oxford University Press. This one is actually put out through the Maxwell Institute, and it's a second edition. Jenny, I've been trying to think about how I want to talk a little bit about this book, because at the core, the book is the Book of Mormon, right?
Right. Yeah,
like,
that is the main content of this book. It's like I'm holding it right now. It's thick, it's heavy, and it's beautifully designed, I must say. And maybe that's because I've been on this role of, getting preview copies of books that is just like, we weren't using that color, so but this is very beautiful and just well designed. And the art in this book, I have to mention, is by Brian Krashisnik, one of my favorite artists. It's really great. But yeah, the main content, when you open it up, the main content is the words of the Book of Mormon.
Which is
not like, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, Jenny, which is interesting, because on the one hand, someone might say, well, why would I bother reading this if I could just going to read the Book of Mormon that I've got, either the old school blue version, or the one on my gospel library app, or the one with the I think it's called onion paper that everyone gets. Why would I bother reading this one if I've already got that? But
I'm glad you asked.
I was going to say, so what would you, if someone were to say, okay, why would I buy this through the Maxwell Institute if it's already out there?
So because, well, one, it's a way different reading experience, right? So like you mentioned, it's edited by Grant Hardy. And if I can, I'm just going to give a brief bio of him. He's a professor of history and religious studies at the University of North Carolina at Asheville. He's the editor of the Book of Mormon, a reader's edition, which is University of Illinois Press. Holler. My brother works there. Anyway, okay. And the author of Understanding the Book of Mormon, a Reader's Guide, in addition to several other books and articles on Chinese history, ancient historiography, and studies of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So you've got someone here who, he knows what he's doing. He's not just some schlub who's going to be out there publishing his own thoughts of it. However, it's a different way, especially if you are, I kind of think of it in two different ways. Maybe it's something like, yeah, like you said, Brandt, like I read it on my app all the time. I have the hard copy, the leather bound, the scriptures that I used in high school and seminary on my mission since then, whatever. And you prefer that. Or maybe you're somebody who you're like, I really struggle with reading scriptures because it's just not that exciting. Whatever the case is, whether you've done it a million times or you're looking for a new way to kind of be more motivated to do it, this is a great resource for you. Kind of the bullet points, that they say, produced by believing scholars for first-time readers, as well as those who have long loved its teachings and testimony of Jesus Christ. The Maxwell Institute Study Edition of the Book of Mormon makes studying the sacred scripture easier than ever before. So if maybe you're somebody who you study the scriptures more out of an obligation or a duty to fulfill, but your real love is reading in a narrative or a novel type version, this is the book for you to really kind of get a different even perspective of the things that are being said in the Book of Mormon. The phrasing, you might say, oh, well, that is kind of poetic. I never thought of it that way. But the way that it's formatted here and laid out in front of me, it just becomes more alive in different ways.
So can I quibble with one word that the Maxwell Institute put in that little blurb there about
Sure.
the value of the book? I actually don't like the word easier. I think it was.
Oh, sure.
I understand where they're going with it, and I think that it might just be my own personal perspective. But what I actually found was it was a lot more engaging and enriching and added more complexity. You had brought up, for example, there are some parts in the Book of Mormon. I believe the one that I'm thinking of off the top of my head is the Psalm of Nephi after Lehi passes away, and Nephi goes into this long, almost soliloquy about just the depths of his soul, seeing his father pass away and all these different things, right? And what Grant Hardy does is he takes it and says, this probably isn't the best way to show it in the typical verse, chapter and verse that we have. But what if I were to frame it out almost as poetry? And I found that as I read it, it was a lot more enriching and engaging rather than the chapter and verse. Now, if we go back to the original publication of the Book of Mormon, it was written in a very much almost a novel or prose type way, where there I don't even know if there were chapters. I think there were the books were there, but not the chapters. The chapters came much later, and I believe it was James Talmage who did a lot of work on separating chapters and verses, and then it was Bruce R. McConkie who made the chapter headings within the Book of Mormon. But what I like about what Hardy did was he kind of revamped a lot of that and made a book where when I'm reading it, it did not feel like I was reading scripture. It felt like I was reading literature, which is kind of this trend that the Maxwell Institute is going towards, re-engaging with the scriptures in a lot different way. And so we've seen that with Thomas Wayman's New Testament retranslation that we're probably going to talk about next week. Yes. But we're also seeing it with this, right? And so on the one hand, for someone, it could be easier to read and comprehend. But for me, I love viewing scripture as literature because it forces you to engage with it on a much different level rather than what we've kind of fallen into within the church sometimes, which is we go to the chapter and verse because we know where that is. It's very clearly defined. And sometimes we proof text it. We don't see what happened before or after to give the context. Whereas this, he tries to do a lot more with that. And that's what I really liked about it.
Yeah, agreed. That's a really great way to put it. And to your point, maybe, easier than ever before, maybe not, definitely different and enriching in a different way. But I'm wondering if they put that on there addressing, like I was saying, like people who struggle and they're like, this is so boring. Like, oh, well then read it like a story.
Sure.
And then more narrative is what I mean by that. But
yeah. So Jenny, I've got to ask, have you read it? And what are your thoughts and feelings as you've read this version of the Book of Mormon versus the typical chapter and verse version that we've got? Did you notice something different as you were reading?
Well, there is at the beginning, I will tell you. So there's this, like using the study edition, there's kind of this, it breaks it out that with a kind of diagramming, almost it looks like diagramming a sentence, right? Like at the beginning of the book. And so to be honest, for me, what it has been is the difference actually has been kind of like you were saying when it's like what people are saying, the way that it's structured on the page, it does look more like, to be honest, more like I'm reading a play or a script, and which for me is very helpful to read things like that. It's like paragraph, kind of like narrative. But then when it's someone's, when it's what they're saying, then that's what makes the difference to me. It just, it brings what's happening to life, in a new way.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. And I think that's a great way to describe it, is setting the scene and making it feel a lot more alive than just the typical version. I would also say for those of you who are watching us on our live stream, which by the way, Patreon members can see a live stream, so you can see all the funny, goofy faces that I make at Jenny as we record. There is a great book that Grant also wrote called Understanding the Book of Mormon by Oxford University Press. This was put out about the same time as his first version of the Book of Mormon study edition from Oxford University Press. And it's a great companion piece. So Jenny, I don't know about you. I wholeheartedly recommend that book. I'm really impressed with the stuff that the Maxwell Institute is doing. And I really like the Maxwell Institute engaging on things like this, because I think what it does is it allows people to take their faith a little more seriously, especially for people who want to engage with it on a different level. I know that Terrell Givens, for example, has really been advocating viewing the Book of Mormon, not as a historical document, and I don't want to put words in his mouth, but viewing it more like literature and engaging with it using some of the same methods that English majors use when they engage with literature, to view it that way. And I think it really helps a lot. So I like what they're doing with the Book of Mormon. And then, like I said, next week we're going to talk about Thomas Wayman's New Testament retranslation that he did for the Maxwell Institute, which, Jenny, is phenomenal. And yes. I've got some very strong thoughts on what the reason I think that it's so important that the Maxwell Institute is doing this, and specifically for the people who might be purchasing that book. But I think that this Book of Mormon study edition is a perfect example of the progress that we're making and helping our members to engage with the scriptures on a much deeper level. That's my thoughts on it.
Yeah, Agreed. And yeah, I just think that there are, the thing is, and I think we're actually kind of seeing an extension of this in missionary work, to be honest with you, that that there everyone has different ways of learning. People learn better, certain ways. And so, and not that there's not more work to be done, but when I hear about things like missionaries being permitted to do things like attend an inactive, we're not calling him, attend somebody's Zumba class. They're a Zumba instructor.
Yeah.
That actually, did I tell you about that?
Yeah, I think you did. Yeah.
One of my daughter's friends who's on a mission in Japan, like there's someone that they've been talking to that she meets with a missionary. She doesn't really care to go to church, and she doesn't like to be she doesn't want to be considered somebody's project. So the sister missionaries got permission to attend this woman's Zumba class, which what that did. And again, not that it's another angle, but it's, like to read, oh, we're going to really pull one over on her. I'm just saying that it's like, we're recognizing that there are more formulas to reach people. There are more ways to learn. There are more ways to accomplish what we want. And I feel like with these, like the Maxwell Institute study editions, things like this are going to not only reach more people, I think we will find surprising results from it because of how different people learn. And I'm excited to see what this does. It's great. So thank you to Maxwell Institute for sending these along.
Amen. So it is the study edition of the Book of Mormon. It's put out by the Maxwell Institute. If you're interested in a copy, if you look in the show notes for our show on your pod fetching app, or if you go to our website, mormonnewsreport.com, you scroll down to the bottom there of this episode, and you will see a link to the Amazon store. If you click that link and you buy it through that link, we get a small little kickback. But I'd recommend for anybody, even if we don't get a kickback, pick it up. It's awesome. And especially for someone who is currently reading the Book of Mormon, it's really, really, really good. So anyways, okay. Should we get into some news, Jenny? We'll make this quick. We'll do a quick news.
Yep.
Okay. The American Red Cross received a $1 million donation from the Church of, and this is quoting from the Saipan Tribune, from the Church of Latter-day Saints main branch in Salt Lake City, Utah. I don't know if they got President Nelson's message on that one. In their recovery efforts for the Northern Mariana Islands after Super Typhoon Yutu ravaged Saipan and Tinan in late 2018. Jenny, the only reason I included this story is because sometimes I think that, and I think Michael Quinn, in his book on LDS church finances, articulated this, and when he talked to Brian and I about last year, that the church actually does a lot of work like this that we don't ever hear about. So when I see stories like this, I include it. Granted, $1 million in the grand scheme of things is not that much, but the church is not one to advertise these things. But I think that they do a lot more work like this than we realize. And I would actually say that the giving machines that were out there are a perfect example of this. There was some press and publicity because it was a novelty thing, but man, the stories that I've heard through the grapevine of how much this generated for humanitarian services is really, really impressive.
Yeah, and especially in the face of criticisms that are often kind of thrown our way, like, how dare you build a mall, which I'm not saying one way or another, right or wrong, or what I think of that at all. I'm just saying, don't discount that there is a lot of actual, work and partnerships even with humanitarian organizations that the church does officially. And it's great to see. So yeah, I agree with you. This should be noted when it happens.
Absolutely. Very quickly, let's do a little bit of Utah politics, because this actually does have some Mormon connotations to it. Robert Gerke is he's one of the main political writers covering the politics that happened in the state of Utah for the Salt Lake Tribune. And he wrote an article that is a very typically snarky article on the beginning of the Utah legislature and, them reviewing all the bills. Typically, they have the Utah House of Representatives Speaker of the House give opening remarks. And I just want to run through a few of them, Jenny, because he said, if I were to write his speech, this is what it would sound like. President Donald Trump has highlighted the dangers of having untold sorts of riffraff threatening to destroy our communities, deviants pouring freely across borders, interlopers taking our best jobs, and he has made the case that a wall is the best solution. So I'm pleased to announce that this session, Representative Mark Roberts will be sponsoring legislation to build a magnificent 30-foot wall along the entire border of Utah County to protect the good people of the South from an invasion by the godless criminals to the north. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
I will slow clap that as a godless criminal from the north. Yeah.
No longer will the people of Utah County have to live in fear of being infested by Salt Lake County Democrats. And what's more, Salt Lake County will pay for it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And finally, this year, we will once again have a bill before us to provide enhanced penalties for hate crimes. Prosecutors and city and county leaders across the state have been urging us to act. This year, we have been given permission by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to do so. This is the news that the bill's sponsor, Senator Daniel Thatcher, has been hoping for. If this bill passes, he no longer will have to live in fear of being pushed around by Representative Brian King. So, Jenny, this is just another example of how often Utah politics intermixes. And like we talked about last week, it really is not a surprise that this is becoming more and more prominent, especially with this hate crimes bill. But I thought that was funny, especially the, listen, every time I've been to Utah, the thought has crossed my mind, Utah County needs a wall, especially to protect it from Salt Lake County.
Oh my gosh. Brandt, I have to applaud you for the preparation you put into this piece with your applause. I mean, really, I'm slow clapping over here. As a godless Salt Lake Democrat, may I just... Yeah.
I don't even think you want to know about how many applause clips I listened to find the right applause, because I wanted to make sure it was correct.
I can only imagine.
Going from the goofy to the sad, an LDS missionary from Brazil has passed away while serving in Portugal. The church confirmed that 20-year-old elder João Victor Rodrigues Gondim collapsed during a soccer game he was playing with other missionaries. The cause of his death is unknown. Elder Gondim has been serving in the Portugal-Lisbon mission since July of 2017 and is from Sao Paulo, Brazil. The LDS Church made a statement and said, "Our hearts go out to his family as they mourn his passing. We pray they will feel peace and support during this difficult time." The church is working to provide counseling to those missionaries who witnessed this tragedy. Jenny, this is just a sad story. Sometimes stuff happens, and there's really nothing we can do about it, but it does happen. And every time I hear something like this, especially when chaos happens, it always just makes you sit back and say, wow, I who would have thought,
Let me ask you, Brandt, have missionaries always been kind of passing away at this rate? Have I not been paying attention? Is there more of it? Is it that I'm paying attention to the news more, that I'm more sensitive to it because I'm a missionary mom now? What is happening? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think we're hearing it more because we pay attention to it more. When I see something like this, I want to make sure that I include it in the news just because it's sad, right? Yeah. But I think we hear about it more, and I think a big part of it has to do with just the access to information that we now have. The fact that when it happens, we know it happens, and people are being contacted, and the church is sending out a note. Versus previously, this is a Brazilian missionary serving in Portugal, and that passed away in Portugal. That is like 3 degrees of separation that me in Detroit or you in Utah would have, and yet we're hearing about it. I also think that as someone who has a missionary out, it probably is something that sticks out to you a little bit more. Like, wow, I mean, this happens,
Yeah, and it isn't, and I guess kind of what strikes me too is it's not like this wasn't something where there was an attack or even like a vehicular incident. He was playing soccer. Right. Oh, the poor kid. Yeah. Our hearts really are broken about this. I can't.
It's sad. It's very sad. Jenny, do you want to take the next one? Because this is one that, not that I want to default to you as our.
Nope, do it. I'm happy to take it.
But I want to know your thoughts specifically on this one. So why don't you take the next one?
Okay, so the LDS Church changes guideline on veiling faces of deceased endowed women. So a new letter was sent to church leaders on January 24th. The letter says, to general authorities, blah, blah. Dear brothers and sisters, veiling an endowed woman's face prior to burial is optional. This may be done if the sister expressed such a desire while she was living. In cases where the wishes of the deceased sister on this matter are not known, her family should be consulted. Thank you for your careful handling of this sensitive matter. So this option of veiling or non-veiling was not previously offered. And for those who may not know, the veil is among the different things among temple clothing worn by women. It's encouraged to be worn at the time of burial where cultural traditions or burial practices permit. However, in respect of cultural traditions that make the temple clothing inappropriate or difficult, the clothing may be folded and placed next to the body in the casket, the church states in its guidelines. Prior to veil wearing change, a woman's face could be unveiled until the casket was to close, at which time a veil could then be covered. The veil could be covered over the deceased female's body by somebody authorized by the local bishop. So, okay, first of all, for people who may not know, active Latter-day Saints are typically, often, all the time, buried in their temple clothes. Did you know that?
I would say often, because I think there's that place in the piece where it talks a little bit about, based on cultural traditions or burial practices within a given area. But if we're going just on a general basis, they are buried within their temple clothes.
Mm-hmm. I say, do you know that? Because I was an endowed adult for a while before I knew that. I didn't know that. So yes, I'm happily your resident female here. What do you have questions? I know you said you want to know my thoughts. My thoughts are, I saw this news article from KUTV2 News in Salt Lake City was tweeted, and I retweeted it with a comment to my husband that said, "Do not veil my face when I die, please." So I may have said something like, "I'd like to be able to breathe," or I can't breathe with that thing on. But then I also CC'd my best friend Karina. So,
So that was the question, because this goes down the road that we talked a little bit about, some of the changes that are happening in the temple, and specifically the temple clothing that women wear within the temple, including the veil. And now to me, it seems like a logical extension that this would be, okay, well, if that is something that's not done in the temple, then when it comes to burial, that is an option as well. And I think the fact that they're calling it out to be an option is another thing. But the question that I had for you is, I'm not a woman, so I don't understand, or I don't know. Help me to understand, what was it that made you say, no, I do not want my face to be veiled when I'm buried?
How do I say? There's a lot of ongoing learning that happens in the temple. I don't think that's too far of a stretch or a surprise to anyone to say. And there are things that happen in the temple that I thought I understood, and then later I'm like, oh, and I understand more. President Hinckley, I think, is well known for having said that he learned something every time he goes to the temple, right? And some of those things are having to do with personal revelation, and other things are having to do with what we're doing in there, because it is a sacred rituals, rites, that it's a form of worship that happens within the temple. And I'm trying to say this to reach out to people who may not understand or haven't been to the temple and don't know, without being, exclusionary. The veil, like it says in this article, is part of what women wear in the temple. And while I realize that the symbolism of the veil is probably very strong there and relates specifically, or is scriptural even, I don't understand veiling within the temple. Veiling faces in the temple is something that has always, and I mean always, since my very first time going there, I've been uncomfortable with, I haven't understood, and I've never found reason for. There have been times too, for instance, like when I've been pregnant and in the temple, and I'm over hot anyway, like my body temperature is higher, and I'm like, oh, I can't breathe in this thing. So you
Which,
know,
which, by the way, is something that I would never, as a male, I would never have experienced.
Of course not. Of course not. Yeah. And to be honest, it's something that it almost makes you wonder, like, am I being a baby? You know what I mean? Like, am I just complaining too much or whatever? But I've never been, it's something that I'm like, I don't know why we're doing this, but
Well,
but I also know that I don't know everything. So that's fine that I don't know why, but I didn't like it.
Can I tell you something that stands out to me is giving the option. And this might seem very small, but now that women have this option and you can choose to do that, to me speaks to the progress and this, man, I know this is going to sound snarky, but the progress the church is making in recognizing that sometimes women feel differently about some of these things than men might realize. And so having that option available and letting women have that autonomy as far as how they'd like to be portrayed when they're buried or how they're buried in general is a big deal. And I think that it is a progressive move, although some people might be laughing at that saying, wait a minute, progressive, right. You mean giving women a choice now is progressive for the LDS church? But for me, I'm thinking about the culture that we have and starting to take those steps of allowing the autonomy for people to have control over how they'd like to do things. And the church saying, yeah, in the grand scheme of things, if you have the option, it doesn't really matter that much. It doesn't matter whether the pearly gates swing or slide. The point is that you get to the pearly gates, right?
Right. And I don't think that sounds snarky. I think that's good. And that's valid. It's true. It's is it pathetic that we would have to label something like this, because, and also like I saw on Twitter anyway, and this is not a new conversation either, but people asking like, well, what about if you're cremated? And that's another conversation too. And I just I agree with you. Like I like that you mentioned that there's an option there. They're not saying we're changing it and now you have to do this. It's, ask, like, make your plans. It's
if you don't, you don't have to.
Yeah. Don't make it like, well, grandma said, there's no way in hell you're going to veil my face in my casket. And then we do it anyway because we want to. No, respect what she said.
Right. So. Right. Okay, Jenny, let me do a couple of really quick stories, and then we've got two big stories that we got to dig into, and then we'll wrap it up. So like I said, this might be a shorter show this week, mostly because, listen, Jenny, I don't know about you. I made a ton of guacamole for this Super Bowl, and I'm like salivating. I can't wait to dig into it, but I got to wait until we get done with this. So quick stories. Here we go. The Hong Kong Temple for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is going to be closed for renovations beginning on July 8th, 2019. The reopening date has not yet been set. President Hinckley was the one who dedicated the Hong Kong Temple on May 26th, and it serves Latter-day Saint members in China, Singapore, and Mongolia. So again, Jenny, leads back to we're going to be closing some of the big temples because we got to do some repairs. Like, it happens, right?
Yep, that's great.
Speaking of temples, the church announced 2 groundbreaking dates for 2 of their temples. The Pocatello, Idaho temple, which still blows my mind that we have not had a temple in Pocatello, Idaho until this time, but go figure. They will be the church's, that's going to be the church's 6th temple in Idaho, and that groundbreaking ceremony is going to take place on March 16th. The Guam temple will be the first temple in the United States territory of Guam, and that groundbreaking ceremony is going to be on May 4th. Still no word on some of the other groundbreakings that are going to be happening, but stuff's happening.
No Star Wars joke, May 4th?
No Star Wars joke on that one.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. That's all right.
Quickly, a nerdy Mormon studies story that myself and a few others might be interested in. Associate Professor of Religious Studies Quincy Newell at Hamilton University was recently appointed as co-editor of the Mormon Studies Review, a publication of the University of Illinois Press. Previously, this was done by the Maxwell Institute. The role will be shared with Benjamin E. Park, Assistant Professor of History at Sam Houston State University and friend of the show. He comes on and he does the year-end book review or books of the year and stuff like that. Newell previously served on the journal's editorial advisory board and worked with Park as a member of the Mormon History Association's board of directors. I love the Mormon Studies Review. It is like Mormon Studies nerdiness to its core. It gets into all the different areas that you get into when you look at Mormonism academically. The fact that it's going to the University of Illinois and that Quincy and Ben are going to be covering it and editing it together is going to be even better. So awesome news, and a big congratulations to both Quincy and friend of the show, Ben Park. Okay, couple more stories and we'll round it out. This one's a bit of a heavy story, and this one is one that we don't have a lot of information on yet, mostly because the bill isn't available. This is, again, another Utah politics story, but I think, Jenny, it has some big Mormon implications. A bill is being drafted in the Utah State Legislature that would allow churches and other nonprofit organizations to apologize for abuse, but not admit culpability. So this is being proposed by Representative Ken Ivory, who is a Republican out of West Jordan. This was an effort to provide abuse victims with, quote, some measure of comfort, end quote, according to Ivory. In an interview with Fox 13, he said, we want to empower these organizations to reach out and minister and help and support victims in their most dire time of need. They're able to reach out, to apologize, to minister, to aid the victims without that being considered any type of basis of liability to such organizations. Now, it doesn't mean that if there's some liability, if they're culpable for something, that's a separate question. They're able to, and again, you can see some of the talking points that they've developed along with this bill. They're able to reach out, to apologize, to aid the victims. Representative Ivory said he hoped the bill would allow for a measurement of empathy in a litigious society. Okay, so that's the individual, Ken Ivory, who is proposing this bill. Craig Vernon, who is the attorney for McKenna Denson, who is accusing Joseph Bishop, a former president of the Missionary Training Center in the 1980s, of rape, told Fox 13 liability for harboring sexual predators instead of protecting children and vulnerable adults may send the wrong message to survivors. With that said, an apology can be critical in the healing process. Legislation that does not strip away any rights from survivors but gives institutions comfort that an apology won't be construed as an admission is something that may make sense as long as survivor groups are involved in the discussion. I believe for most survivors, an apology must be accompanied by action. Otherwise, it rings hollow. The LDS Church told Fox 13 it has yet to review the legislation. The Catholic Diocese of Salt Lake City has also declined to comment until it has reviewed a draft of the bill. So, Jenny, on first glance, my first thought was, what on earth is this? You're telling me that you want to introduce a bill that would allow someone to say, hey, by the way, I'm sorry for that, but I don't want to take any responsibility for that. On the other hand, there is a part of me that says it allows organizations like the church to work on that healing process, but I don't want to go down too much of a basic path here. But is it part of the repentance process that we teach primary kids? You need to admit that you're wrong, say I'm sorry, and then make restitution. And so that's been one of my theories, that the church has used very careful language in describing something like the Mountain Meadows Massacre, because if you begin to say that you might be guilty in it, then you open yourself up for the descendants of the Mountain Meadows Massacre to go after you for, I don't want to call it reparations, that's a very separate thing, but restitution of some sort. So I'm sitting here saying it sounds like what you're trying to do is you're trying to go along the route that has occurred in public relations a lot of mistakes have been made, where you can acknowledge that something bad happened, but you're not admitting guilt. And to me, that rings a little hollow. Now, that being said, I want to review this bill. I want to dig into the language because I don't know. Am I missing something here, Jenny?
No, because here's the deal. Words matter. And like you said, you can definitely see, and it's smart for any organization, whatever they may be, to be very careful with their language and how they phrase things. I'm wondering, and I would be hopeful that there would be a way, because what you don't want is for there to be no way to bridge any of these gaps, right? Like the church isn't going to come out and say, like, we're sorry we allowed this to happen. They're not, like, say to McKenna Denson. Of course not, because then that means that they did it. Right. And to go back to your point about what we learn in the gospel, there's Brent, there's a lesson for nursery kids that's I can say I'm sorry. And I remember teaching it a long time ago and being like, I want to say I can say I'm sorry, because you never want to apologize for someone else. That can be very demeaning and disrespectful, even dismissive rather. But I'm wondering if it's like, okay, well, but we need to come up with a way that we can express sympathy, compassion. I do agree with what you said about that McKenna Dentz's attorney said, I believe for most survivors, an apology must be accompanied by action. Otherwise it rings hollow. So, so again, the church isn't going to say, we're sorry we're sorry about this. Mm-hmm. They have to say, but I think it's not a bad thing for them to express, oh, wow. Like, gosh, I don't know, because the institution angle, I guess, is where I'm kind of getting tripped up. I think about it maybe just like, an extension of a personal level, where if you say to somebody, oh, I'm sorry, man. I mean, there's a difference between, I'm sorry I did that. I'm sorry you got hurt. I'm sorry that happened to you. I feel bad that you're hurting. Like those are all ways of kind of saying, like, I'm sorry in a way that's, because there's a way that says, I'm sorry because I'm taking responsibility that I did this. And then there's another, I'm sorry that you are feeling this way, and I'm telling you that I'm going to sit with you in your sorrow and help comfort you. Do you know what I'm saying? That's a way of extending compassion. But I agree too. It's like, oh, I'm sorry this happened. And also, again, time travel machine, right? And also Joseph Bishop will never be around youth again, or something like that.
Right. Well, as I'm thinking through it, there's a part of me that says maybe that's the key component that I'm missing is, for example, let me pull a couple of strings together here. First of all, I've been watching the latest season of True Detective on HBO, which is really good. And they're dealing with a story that is very similar to what happened with the West Memphis Three. So the West Memphis Three were a group of boys in the 80s in the height of the Satanic Scare who were accused of murdering and mutilating 2 boys. They went to jail and they were exonerated years later. But one of the ways that they were exonerated was the state was allowed to let them leave on time served, but not admit guilt in, basically it's something weird along the lines of, like, they didn't have to overturn the guilty plea, but they were allowed to get out. So it's allowing the state to say, yeah, we made a mistake, but we're not going to say that we made a mistake, if that kind of makes sense. And so that's what I'm reading a little bit. That was the first thing that came into my mind with this. But as I think about it a little bit more, I think maybe the difference that Representative Ivory is going for here is it allows an individual bishop to get involved with them without the fear of litigation, instead of, ooh, okay, well, you're in a lawsuit against the church right now, and I don't want to get involved at all or working with you as a spiritual leader because of this pending lawsuit and because I am a quote-unquote representative of the church in the capacity of a bishop. Maybe that's what they're going for, and maybe that's the middle line that's going to be drawn. But I will say this, Jenny, that headline, a bill in the Utah legislature would let churches apologize for abuse without admitting guilt. That is a charged headline. And that's the reason why I'm sitting here trying to think through, okay, what am I missing here? What am I not getting? Because on the surface, it sounds really, really bad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Again, I just think, like, there's, it's what words are, right? I mean, so an apology is an expression of regret, right? And that can be for something that is current, like, I am so sorry that you're going through this, or regret of your own intention or action. And I just, like, I'm hopeful that, and again, I look forward to seeing a draft of this bill also. But I'm hopeful that what it means is to find a way where compassion can be extended. And that's what I'm hoping for.
I'm with you. Okay, last story of the week. The church now has a new planning tool for prospective missionaries. I played around with this tool. It's actually kind of an interesting tool. So this is from the church's website. If you want to start or finish your mission at a certain time, the submission planning tool and the mission release date planning tool can help you determine when to submit your recommendation. You and your family should also prayerfully consider the following points when deciding when to submit your recommendation. They include things like, when do you have to go? One of the things that was brought up, and they actually called it out there, was you do not need to leave exactly when you're 18. And they have a quote from President Monson when he announced the age change that said you don't have to leave exactly when you're 18. The site encourages prospective missionaries that they don't need to leave for their missions the instant they turn 18 for men and 19 for women. Quote, this is from Elder Brent H. Nielsen, Executive Director of the Missionary Department. In some cases, they may leave as soon as they turn 18 or 19. In other cases, they may decide to spend a little extra time preparing. That decision is best left up to the missionary and their parents as they prayerfully consider their circumstances. Nielsen said some prospective missionaries may do better after gaining life skills and experiences by spending time at college or working independently. This planning tool uses actual data, updating continuously based on the church's missionary needs worldwide. While it does not guarantee a missionary will leave on a certain date, it will help our young men and women be more deliberate and thoughtful as they decide when they will be best prepared to serve the Lord as a missionary. So really quickly, Jenny, if you go over to this new site that the church has, you can say, I would like to leave at, let's say I'm going to submit my papers on June 1st of 2020. And what they will do is they will use the data of all the missionary submissions that they've gotten, and they will give you a time frame to say, you might leave on this date, or you might leave for the MTC on this date. So here's about the times that you're going to happen, and here's the most likely time that it's going to happen. Additionally, you could type in, when am I going to be home from my mission, to say, I think, I'd like to get home on I don't know, January 21st, 2022. And they will say, based on the data that we have, we think that you should submit your paperwork by this day, because that way you'll have your whole mission. Here's another interesting thing that was from this information: asking for an early release. It is expected that missionaries serve their full term of service, 24 months for elders and 18 months for sisters. Please do not ask your mission president to release you earlier than your assigned release date. We encourage you to use the provided tools to plan the timing of your mission before submitting your recommendation. I'm not going to say it was common, Jenny, but it did happen on a regular basis in my mission, where people would go home a month early, usually because they were going to be starting school and they've already registered for school. And so I got to get home. And so you would see people maybe only do 23 months of their mission, or depending on transfer times and stuff like that. But I looked at this, Jenny, and I was like, this is really cool, especially when I think of some of the boys that I had in my priest quorum who were getting ready to serve a mission, to have data like this at their fingertips to say, okay, this is when I think I'm probably going to get my mission call, based on everybody and their brother submitting their mission recommendations in May or June. Okay, it might be delayed a few months, versus, oh, okay, I need to be home by this date. It's really cool to see, and I love the fact that they're using real world data to do this.
That's really cool. I'll have to get on there and see. I hope that people understand that, at least from what I can see now, that request to not, or that note to not request an early release date doesn't apply for other things. Like, that's specifically in reference to this missionary planning tool, because I can see what if I had to predict, the first thing when I saw this, the first thing I thought of was, man, and it's good too, because they are using the data, right? But there's going to be this influx of like kids who, like that the MTC will have the most people right when a semester gets out.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And people want to plan right, and the reality is, though, that they have to stagger it. They just have to. So what I could imagine is people being like, well, I'll just submit and then just ask to come home early, type of thing. One of the things that they brought up in this article from the
Herald Extra is, if you're someone who could use a little more individual attention at the Missionary Training Center, you might want to schedule it for a time when it's not going to be a peak season that would allow you to have that. For example, if it takes you a little bit more time to get comfortable with reading out loud with people, or if I'll just be frank, if learning a new language is difficult for you, it might be better to go when there's not as many people. So, like, I don't know, around the December holiday versus when everyone's there in the summer. The other thing too is, I'm glad that they put in that piece about not leaving directly when you're 18. I see it, based on what I know about Utah, Jenny, I see it a little bit differently in Michigan, because we have missionaries. We see our missionaries week after week, whereas from what I've heard in Utah, that's not always the case. Sometimes missionaries are assigned to multiple wards and even multiple stakes sometimes, where you don't see them very often. I'm not sure if that's the case in your ward.
Yeah. I mean, back east, it was like the missionaries are like a staple in every Sunday, but that's not, it's like today some missionaries came to my Sunday school class and I was like, oh, hi, you guys here today? And they're like, I guess. And I'm like, great. Like I've never seen him before.
Yeah.
Might not see him again.
Yeah. So based on that, I've seen some really great missionaries. And again, and I'm going because I see them, every single week. I see some really great ones, but I also see some that it's like, man, how are you on a mission? And it goes back to this thought that I've always had where people heard you could go right at 18 and think that that's what you should do. And I think after we've gone through this a little bit and people have learned a little bit, they're getting a little bit better about either preparing their sons or daughters to go on a mission so that by the time they're 18, they're ready to go, or allowing them to go to college for a little bit, or allowing them to live away from home for a little bit just to get used to some of that stuff. Because I've seen some stuff where I don't want to get into a lot of details, but some stuff where I'm just like, that is the absolute wrong thing. And I would have never thought to have done that when I was the missionary. Not that I want to say, hey, I'm older than you and I know what's up, but part of me, I did have a lot of time on my own before I went where I was pretty self-sufficient versus some of these guys where it's like, really? Like you thought that was appropriate? Oh, okay, fine. That's cool.
Interesting. Yeah.
So anyways, okay. All right. Should we do Sunshine in Your Soul?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. You want me to go first or you want to go first?
Go ahead.
Okay. I got to prepare you for this one.
Okay.
The Sunshine in My Soul this week is Kids Bop.
Yeah, for sure.
You're familiar with Kids Bop, right, Jenny?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's rad. I love
it.
So
Kids Bop is pop songs done by little kids for little kids. It happened. So last year we did a combined activity with all of our youth where we did a big white elephant party. And one of the gifts that someone submitted, actually the spouse of a friend of the show, Brian, who listens, she submitted a 12-pack of Peps, or a 12-pack of Dr. Pepper and a CD on top of it. Now, my wife was there and said, Brandt, you better trade for that Dr. Pepper. I really want that Dr. Pepper. So right? And I get it. And the CD is a Kids Bop CD. And I was like, oh, you got to be kidding me. This is what a Kids Bop CD. So I bring it home and my daughter, my 5-year-old daughter, starts listening to it. She loves it. Tells me, Daddy, can we order more? So I end up ordering like 3 CDs worth on iTunes. And again, she's 5 years old and she's got her own little iPod because that's the world that we live in. Jenny, a 5-year-old, has an iPod. When I first got my iPod, it was like a big bleeping deal, right? She's walking around yesterday, and this is one of those moments where I was like, this is absolutely adorable, but it's terrifying because you're way too young for this. She has pants, and she is a girl. She calls them her pocket pants because they're pants with pockets on there. And we've talked about the importance of pockets for girls and pants and women.
You have no idea.
Okay.
It is a thing.
So she's got her little iPod in her back pocket of her pants. She has got these My Little Pony kids headphones on, and she's just walking around. And her and Ashley and my other daughter went out to go do something yesterday. They came home, and she walks in with her headphones around her neck. And I was like, what are you listening to? And she's like, I'm listening to Kids Bop. And so it's awesome because it's like, you're getting into music now. Like, this is really cool that you're getting into music and we can talk about music and listen to music. But it's Kids Bop. But
nope, it's fine. It's fine.
So, anyways, I am repenting for bagging on Kids Bop. It's not horrible.
It isn't. And so what are a couple of the songs that are on that volume? Because Kids Bop has like volumes of like, I mean, there was stuff that my own kids did when they had their Kids Bop CDs back in the early mid 2000s. And
yeah. So the one that she really likes is it's a version of Meet Me, or is a version of The Middle by Zed and Maren Morris. She loves that one. That is the exact one. She loves that, and now that she's got a Kids Bop version, like she listens to that a ton. So that is her current jam right now.
I love it. Oh, that's so cool.
Okay, what do you
got? People Being Nice.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you know the band Guster?
I do know the band Guster.
I love Guster. And they're one of my favorites and one of John Dye's favorites. And it's one of the things actually that I was like, because I don't meet a whole lot of people out here who know Guster. But anyway.
Weren't they like a Midwest band to begin with?
No. They started back east.
Oh, okay.
Yep. And anyway, they're coming to Salt Lake, and because they're on tour. Their album just came out, and John got tickets for us like last fall when the tickets were first available. We're not able to go see
You're not able to go see them?
No, it's tomorrow night, and we're going out of town. And Guster, I mean, they're this big. I mean, these guys have been together since college, and they never thought in a million years that, you know, like all these years later, they'd be playing together still, and people would be into their albums and whatever. And they're so great. And anyway, but they're also really, like, they reach out to their fans, and they're responsive, and they're really great. And anyway, I reached out to them, and I was like, "You guys going to be in Salt Lake? Like, can we come see you?" And they were like, "Oh, actually, we're going to be in St. George." Like, they're in St. George today watching the Super Bowl. But they responded. They were like, you know, I was like, "Can we just," anyway.
They're like a total garage band. Yeah,
but they, I mean, they were kind, and I mean, I know it sounds super entitled of me, like, who do you think you are? Like, and they could have just blown me off and not responded, but they did. And I just knew it would never happen if I didn't ask, for sure. So I didn't. But also, an article was published last.
Yeah, I heard about this thing.
Listen, here's the deal. I have to say that last Sunday in Relief Society, someone made a comment and said the following: mommy blogs are trappings of Satan.
Okay. Weird flex, but okay.
Right? That's exactly. And so anyway, the next morning, Monday morning, I got a text from my friend Amy, and she said, "Hey, I saw a familiar face." It was this article in KSL that was like 9, what was the title of it? I don't even remember. I'm so bad. 9 Utah connected bloggers who can make you smarter, stylish, wealthier, and more. And I was like, oh, and I scrolled down, and there's one on there that my friend who sent me the text, she and I had discussed before, and I was like, oh, that's it. And then I scroll down farther, and I'm like, oh wait, I'm on this list, and it's, I'm devastated and I'm embarrassed, but the what I'm saying is the sunshine is the response to it, because people have been really, like, minimally making fun of me for it to my face, but also just, like, really kind and been like, wow, that's really great. So I should start blogging again, I guess, is my thing. And
listen,
people just been really nice.
I feel bad that I didn't introduce you as prominent social media-ite and blogger extraordinaire Jenny Noonan Dye joining us on the show today. I feel remiss on not doing that.
I am a popular marketer.
Okay.
What even is a popular marketer? Again, thanks KSL. Also, it's imposter syndrome at its finest, Brandt, is what it is. Right?
So if you'd like to see why Jenny is referred to as one of the KSL's 9 popular bloggers that'll make you smarter, stylish, and more wealthy, you can find more of her.
Here's a little note. You're not going to be wealthier or stylish or more popular or anything, like, I don't know.
But Jenny, how would they know that if they didn't go to your site, formerlyfred.com, right?
Yes, formerly Fred, FORMERLYPHREAD.com. Thank you very much. I'm in Twitter also at formerly Fred. I'm embarrassed about the thing, but I'm really grateful because people have been kind. That's what I'm saying.
I'm just trying to get your name out there a little bit, you know, and help you market and stuff like that. So anyways, formerlyfred.com is how you can find more of Jenny's writing, which she's going to start doing now more of, right?
Yes, I am. And the PS that I wasn't even going to add to my sunshine, but we went to a basketball game last night, and I'm just going to say it, the prophet was sitting right in front of us.
Let me just pick that up for you real quick.
Do it, because you know what? The prophet was sitting in front of us at a basketball game.
You texted me, and I was like, what am I looking at? And then once you told me, I was like, oh, he does that?
Right?
He does that. Okay.
Yeah. He seemed to enjoy it very much.
Yes. So anyways, so more of Jenny, you can find her on Twitter, Instagram, or go to her website, formerlyfred.com. You can get more of us. Follow me on Twitter at The Mormon News. You can follow the show on Facebook. You can email us, mail@mormonnewsreport.com. For that, Jenny, let's wrap the show up. It's been fun. Go Rams. I think the Rams are going to win by 1 point. I will put my prediction out there. Do you have a prediction, Jenny?
No, I don't.
You just hope both teams have fun?
But by 1 point.
1 point.
Wow.
I think they're going to win by 1.
Okay.
It's going to be a tight game.
Okay.
Okay. Folks, thank you for listening. Remember to rate and review us on iTunes. You can find us on all the various places that are out there. Remember to check out our Amazon store. You can find links inside the show notes, and we will talk to you again after a while where I need music, but I'm delaying because I don't have the music up. So we're going to talk to you again after, where is... Talk to you again after a while. I should have just had you do the music, Jenny. That would have been much easier.
Yeah, right.
Okay. All right. I got to go upstairs and eat dinner.
All right. Have fun.
Okay. Talk to you later.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay, bye.